Dear friends, unfortunately, I didn't have time to write the whole story, but from 8 to 10 chapters I will definitely write and publish. Listen to the story to the end and write me what you liked and what you didn't. Chapter 1: The New World. Michael was an ordinary young man from New York. His life was routine. Work in the office, football on weekends and a few games on the computer. But one day, when he was walking home after work, Michael saw a strange light around the corner. He walked towards the light and found a large circular portal, rapidly changing colors inside itself. Under the influence of curiosity, Michael decided to come closer to the portal to take a closer look at it. And without warning, he felt the force from the portal fly out, grab him and then suck him inside. When Michael opened his eyes, he was stunned. He was in a huge meadow filled with colorful flowers and grasses with colorful butterflies wrapped around him. He saw a huge tree in the distance, which glowed with a red light, like lights inside it. Michael couldn't believe his eyes. He looked around and saw strange creatures, similar to dwarves and elves, who lived quietly next to themselves. Michael realized that he had entered a new world where anything could happen, and where everything that used to be ordinary in his ordinary life disappeared. He didn't know what to do or where to look for help. However, Michael was sure that he was not alone in this new world. He knew that there were many other intelligent beings here who could help him understand this magical world. Dear friends, that's all for today. Tomorrow I will post the second chapter, and if I have time, then the third and fourth. Chapter 2: Superpowers. Michael spent the first day in the new world, studying its life and the creatures that lived here. He learned that this world is filled with magic and secrets, where everyone has their own abilities and skills. However, Michael felt uncomfortable, as he did not have any superpowers. On the second day, when Michael explored the neighborhood, he discovered that he had become the owner of incredible strength. He could easily lift heavy loads and run fast, and his reaction to sudden movements improved more than twice. At first it was not clear to him, but at the same time, the feeling of his own strength gave him confidence and more self-confidence in this unfamiliar world. He began to study his new abilities in depth, test them in practice and figure out how to control them. Every day he felt more and more familiar in his new body, getting new information about the animals and plants of the world, talking with the locals and studying magic. Soon, Michael found that his superpowers were not limited to mere strength. He could see in the dark, he had an insurmountable immunity to magic spells, he could change the shape of his body and fly. All these superpowers seemed incomprehensible and unexpected to him, but at the same time they gave him unique opportunities and completely changed his life. Knowing that he did not consciously invoke his abilities, Michael began to explore their depths in order to better understand himself and his capabilities. Now he was not just a resident of the new world, but also the owner of superpowers that he could use to his advantage. And now he had a lot of options in front of him. He had to choose which of these could be useful and which could not. Chapter 3: Clash with Evil. Michael was fascinated by the fantasy world and its unusual superpowers. He continued to study various aspects of magic and his superpowers to become even more powerful. One day Michael faced evil. An evil group of villains imposed their will on the inhabitants of the fantasy world, turning them into slaves. Michael knew he couldn't just stand by when someone needed his help. He decided to confront them and fight for justice. He met new friends in this world who fought with him against evil. They were extraordinary warriors and sorcerers, each of whom had their own abilities. They united against the obsessive villains and auxiliary sorcerers and achieved victory over them. However, when they found ways to return to the real world, Michael and his friends realized that they could not just leave the fantasy world without protection. They decided to stay, because only they can protect him from new villains and sorcerers. Michael fully realized his responsibility and the full power of his abilities, and now he was looking for ways to help people in need. He uses his abilities to protect others and cuts down anyone who tries to create problems. He continues his adventures in the fantasy world, always on the move and ready for new challenges. His new friends are always there, ready to help him, and together they continue to fight for justice and the protection of their worlds from evil. Eventually, Michael realizes that even if he leaves the fantasy world forever, he will always remember them and remember their protection. Chapter 4: Friendship. When Michael got into the fantasy world, he was completely alone. He was seized with fear and anxiety, because he did not know where he was going and what would happen to him. But soon he was lucky enough to find new friends. It was Ellie and Kyle. Ellie was an archer with long shiny hair. She took Michael across the river and taught him how to shoot an arrow. Michael soon realized that Ellie wasn't just losing her arrows, which almost always hit the target. She really cares about her teammates, risking her life to help her friends. Later, Michael met Kyle. Kyle was a young warrior who held his sword as if he was born for it. He taught Michael a lot, including how to fight monsters and defeat them easily. Michael was very glad that he had found friends in this strange world. He felt that he was no longer alone in this new environment, but now he had the support and help of his comrades. One day, when they were fighting villains who were trying to take over the whole world, they decided to stop the evil Hugo. Hugo was a powerful and dangerous seducer who wanted to become the king of the whole world. Hugo was surrounded by his army of cruel monsters, but Michael and his friends did not lose heart and fought to the last. Michael, along with Ellie and Kyle, heroically confronted the enemy, protecting each other. They were smarter and faster than all the other competitors in the whole world. With the help of cunning and dexterity, they led to victory. After defeating Hugo, they realized the true power of friendship. They exchanged iron hugs, shared deep thoughts and laughed, realizing that they were not just comrades in arms, but also true friends. Since then, the three have been inseparable, continuing to fight for their strange but beautiful world. Michael has found a new family in this world that is always worried about his well-being and that always stands behind him. Chapter 5. Return. Michael and his friends have already spent a lot of time in the fantasy world, but they began to feel nostalgia and a desire to return to the real world. They learned of a way to return to their homes. However, the solution was not easy. They did not want to leave their friends in the fantasy world that gave them so much. Michael, Ellie and Kyle decided to look for a way to stay in the world that wanted them. They began to explore their new world to find magical items that can help them protect this world from destruction. They knew it would be difficult, but they were ready for this challenge. First, they found an amulet that gives its owner magical powers. Kyle took over this amulet because he was an experienced warrior and could use it in the best way. Then they found a healing potion that helped to remove all the lesions and vulnerabilities so that their bodies were ready for anything. The search continued until they found an ancient scroll. But this scroll was unusual, it was enchanted. They soon realized that it was impossible to use it until it was solved. The solution was very difficult, but they did not give up. Eventually, they found a way to unravel the enchantment, and the scroll gave them magical weapons tools that could defeat enemies using good against evil. Their equipment was now ready, and they were ready to fight for their new world. They have fought many battles and protected the world from many dangers. Finally found the time to use a way to return to the real world. They felt strange when they found themselves in their real bodies. They exchanged parting words with friends who now lived in their hearts, and whom they will never forget. But they swore that if ever the need arose, they would return to their new world to protect it from all threats. And now that they were in the real world, they never forgot about their friends. They knew that they had a new home in this world, which they had found so unexpectedly, and which they would always remember with warmth in their hearts. Chapter 6. Assistance to those in need. After a long absence from the fantasy world, Michael returned to his homeworld. Having experienced many adventures, he realized that he had acquired many skills and possessed abilities that could help people in his native country. He understood that he could not stay in his little world and had to use his new skills to help those in need. The first thing Michael decided to do was to help homeless people he noticed on the streets. He started by donating money to a house for the homeless and then began to give them food and clothes, preparing a daily lunch for them. Michael was surprised how hopeless people often had enough simple hot food to restore their working capacity and strength. Watching their gratitude, Michael realized that small things can help people cope with big difficulties. Then Michael started doing charity work that helped sick children. He participated in charity events and gave them many gifts, and also spent his time spending their time in the hospital. The joy that the children experienced while spending time with Michael was indescribable, and he felt how his abilities helped them improve their mood and state of mind. After a while, Michael found out about the Children's Center, where they were supposed to come to hold entertainment events, animation and masterclasses. Michael was attracted by these ideas, and he decided to become an independent volunteer at a children's center. For several months, he conducted games, masterclasses and lectures that took into account the interests of children, showing a lot of interesting and fascinating things. Michael saw how the children blossomed by taking part in his classes, and at the end of each event he was surrounded by children trying to listen to stories about his adventures from the fantasy world. Michael continued to help those who needed his help, and his skillful hands brought benefit and joy to many people. Soon he learned about working in charitable organizations, where he needed help in projects to combat poverty, first aid in disasters and other critical situations. Michael decided to join a charity and become a volunteer. This gave him the opportunity to work in a team, with other enthusiasts who shared his desire to help those who were in trouble. The desire to help people determined a new path for Michael, and he began to do charity work constantly, learned to feel more subtly what and when it was necessary, developed sensitivity and somewhat improved his talents. Michael was aware that everyday life is full of incredibly complex problems and unpredictable situations, and he was ready to help anyone who needed his support and help. Chapter 7. A New Clash. Michael and his friends decided to spend a non-formative day with each other in the park. Their plans, however, were disrupted when they came across a group of strange people who suddenly appeared in the park. The appearance of these people was bizarre. They were dressed in black suits, with long sleeves and hoods that completely covered their faces. These people were obviously magicians, and Michael and his friends were on their guard. However, before they could say anything, the magicians, at one point, began to use their magic power. They conjured various spells and produced incredible things, such as tantalizing lights that it was impossible to look away from, or a ball of snakes that fell from the sky. At first, Michael and his friends were surprised and intrigued by the effects that the magicians showed, but then they realized that something bad was happening. Magicians became more and more aggressive, directing their magic against the people around them, and Michael decided that his job was to stand up and protect those who could not protect themselves. He quickly realized that magicians use dark magic and they have an attachment to an ancient black spell that has long been banned in his native country, but was still known to the souls of those who sought power and control. At first, Michael tried to convince the magicians to stop their aggression, but his words were ignored. Using his new skills and experience gained in the fantasy world, Michael challenged the magicians. In battle, Michael used his knowledge of magic to evade his traps and spells that were trying to be used against him. He and his friends used their powers to attack magicians and protect those who needed their help. The battle was intense and lasted for a long time until all the magicians were defeated and sent to prison. After the battle was over, Michael was imbued with a bitter sense of his new reality. He learned that his home world was as confusing and dangerous as any other world he could enter through the gate. He understood that now he must use his new skills not only to help those who need his help, but also to fight against the evil that is in every corner of his home world.